Alright guys, so without further ado, this is a video that I intended to get out last week, but with it being Friday the 13th, just had a lot going on and it was very chaotic. So I do want to open this video up with a big disclaimer because this is going to be a lot more of a very opinion driven and freeform video than some of my others. But with that being said, today what we are talking about is what not to say in a tattoo shop. So this specifically is going to be likely the first in a series of videos, because this one specifically we're focusing on what not to say at the front counter. Now, the reason why, in my opinion, that's important is because a lot of the time when you walk into a tattoo shop, you are setting the first impressions and you are really kind of setting the vibe for what the relationship is going to be like between you and a potential tattooer. And that may not be an issue if this is going to be a one-time thing. You know, you may be traveling, you may just be walking into a random tattoo shop. You may not be the kind of person that cares all that much about building a rapport with the person that's going to be tattooing you. But I think this is important, and a lot of these things you hear said consistently. So I felt like some of them deserved to be addressed. So with that being said, for number one, we have, what is your shop minimum? So the issue that I have with this specific question being asked is that basically the client that comes in and asks that question is almost operating on the assumption that what they want is something that can be had for the shop minimum. Now, in some places, your shop minimum may be, I've heard of some as low as $40. I've heard of some that are as high as $120 or even $200. So in a place like that, with that being the case, the spectrum of different possibilities for what the shop minimum can be, it's not the most problematic to ask about the shop minimum. However, it does kind of imply that, like I said, you're assuming that what you want can be had for that. Because in a vast majority of cases, what the shop minimum is, it doesn't matter. I mean, me personally, I would much prefer for a client to come in and ask, here's what I want, here's some reference, how much is this? I have X for my budget. So, and the other thing too is, and while we as tattooers, I feel like a lot of us, we like to pick and choose where it is and is not appropriate to draw comparisons to other service industries, specifically the food service industry. But there's no other service industry that you would walk in and ask, what's the cheapest plate of food I can get? What's the cheapest drink I can get from the bar? I mean, maybe that happens. I don't know. I only have like a limited exposure to the food industry, but you really normally wouldn't do that. So with all that being said, it's just, like I said, I would prefer somebody to come in and just ask, show me what they want. How much is this? And then I respect it whenever somebody says like, this is what my budget is for it, because I personally can make compromises to a design, to make it to where I can meet them in the middle. Also, a lot of the time with like the whole shop minimum thing, a lot of the time people think that, and I'll get into this a little bit more later on, but the pricing, what makes a tattoo the price that it is, there's a lot of factors. There's a lot of different things that could potentially affect how much a tattoo is. And then, like I said, I'll get into this a little bit more later because there is another one that kind of draws on that specific topic. Anyways, for number two, we've got the old classic, draw it up, and if I like it, I'll get it. So to the general public, it might not be obvious why that's a problematic thing to say, but to any artist, I'm certain that every career tattooer has heard this at some point. So the problem with that is that no tattooer that's been doing it for a while, like no tattooer that values their time is just going to be drawing for free. The thing is, as a client, you really need to do your research on a tattooer. If you're going to allow someone to tattoo you, and granted, if you're just walking into a shop getting something that like anyone can do, then like that's a little bit different. But the reality is that before you walk in the door of a tattoo shop, you should know who you want to do your tattoo, and you should have established some kind of trust in that person. But like every tattooer has an online portfolio. Almost every tattooer has an Instagram, so you can kind of go look at that and ascertain whether or not that person has the skills necessary to do what you want. So like I said, it's not, you can't just expect to walk into a tattoo shop and demand that they start drawing for you without there being any promise of whether or not their time invested in that is even going to be rewarded. So if you trust somebody, go into the shop. If it's a custom tattoo, just put down a deposit, and deposits can be anywhere from, being not that much. I mean, it might only be $50, and it could be as much as $200. And granted, you should hope that if somebody's charging a $200 deposit just to draw something, that they have the skill set necessary to do what you want. But yeah, just be prepared to put down a deposit before you set the expectation that someone is going to draw your custom tattoo for you, because it could be extremely time consuming. And in the event that you haven't established that trust for the person that you potentially would have tattooing you, just make sure that you're willing to pay in advance for that. I mean, like the worst case scenario, for some reason you think you trust this person, but they draw it up, you hate what they drew, at least you compensated them for their time invested in preparing that drawing for you. So that's pretty much the thing. Just be prepared to put down a deposit. For number 3, we've got, and this is a little bit more of an obscure question. You don't hear this one nearly as often as you hear the first two, but every once in a while you'll hear it, and it kind of plays on themes of my last one. But anyways, the question is, who's your best artist? So in my mind, when you go walking into a tattoo shop, you should already know who, in your opinion, is the quote unquote best artist. Now it's a weird question, because it's like, the reality is that if you go walking into a tattoo shop without an appointment, not knowing anyone there, you're probably not going to get tattooed by the person who's the quote-unquote best artist, because chances are that they've got a whole booking system, and they've got their schedule. But all that aside, like, what kind of metrics should a person use to ascertain who is the best artist? Like, 'cause that's the thing, is it, and I have the same issue with like the whole nature of like competitive tattooing on television. Like, it's so subjective. There's no like actual cut and dry method of determining who is the best artist. And it's just so opinion driven. I mean, the things that I value, the things that I think make a tattooer able to do cool tattoos, they might not be the same things that just some random person off the street thinks are good. The reality is that there is like a massive discrepancy between having the frame of reference as a tattooer to determine what you think makes a good tattoo versus just some random person on the street what they think makes a good tattoo. So to come in and ask such a very subjective question, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it creates like unnecessary competitiveness, or it kind of, it's a symptom of a greater problem where I personally feel like comparison is the thief of joy, and to try to create a metric or to try to quantify this person's shortcomings versus this person's shortcomings, or this person's strengths versus this person's strengths. I mean, the reality is that art is not a competition. Despite as much as people may want to make it that, art is not a competition. It's a cooperation. I mean, we should be doing all that we can to inspire one another instead of doing what we can to point out this person's flaws or this person's flaws, or I don't know. Just the whole question. It's a whole can of worms, and I don't know. It's you're not going to get a straight answer whenever you ask that question, or it's just not productive. You're not going to. It doesn't do anything to come in and ask who's the best artist. So, anyways, for number 4, and this one you hear a lot. I mean, anybody that works in a street shop, you're going to have heard this before, and it is such a not worthwhile conversation that at this point, whenever I hear people say stuff like this, I kind of just shut down. So anyways, what not to say, number 4, my homeboy can do it cheaper, or I got this tattoo. They'll point at some random, usually dog shit tattoo on their arm and say, I got this for $60. Why are you telling me that this is going to be this much? So first of all, if you've got some homeboy that does cheap tattoos on you and you like the work, why are you walking into this tattoo shop? Like, where is your homeboy? The reality is that, like, most often they're like, oh, well, I got this in jail, or, oh, my homeboy got locked up. So it's like, duh. Like, why would you even try to establish that comparison? You just walked into a tattoo shop where you don't know anybody there, and basically you're communicating that you feel entitled because you've been priced lower. I mean, inflation is a thing. Like, there's so many reasons why this is a ridiculous thing to say when you walk into a tattoo shop. You hear it all the time. Like, the reality is that the pricing of tattoos is so subjective. I mean, somebody who's booked out for months at a time, as compared to somebody who's desperate for money, like, there's so many different things that influence the price of a tattoo. I mean, like, are you getting it during, like, the busy season? Like, are you getting tattooed during income tax season, or are you getting tattooed in the dead of winter whenever everybody's kind of hurting for money? Are you getting a cool tattoo that this person actually wants to have in their portfolio, or are you getting just some very typical, like, just, I mean, I don't know, like, there's so many factors that can influence it. So with that being said, I mean, it's silly to set the expectation that you already know how much a tattoo should cost. It's okay to, as previously mentioned, it's okay to have a budget in mind. If you walk in, I'm looking to get this, I'm hoping I can get it for this price. Worst case scenario, we say no. And you're not at a loss. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, at this point, I kind of disengage at that point. I'll usually let whoever the counter help is deal with the person whenever we reach the point in the conversation where they're telling me how much their other tattoos cost. So my recommendation, don't say anything of that nature when you walk into a tattoo shop. It's just not going to be a good time. Okay, so for my final what not to say in a tattoo shop, what not to ask, rather, how much for whether it be small, medium, large, or like a sleeve or whatever, how much for a blank tattoo? So I kind of hit on this before. There are so many factors that can affect the price of a tattoo. You could say how much for a small tattoo, but are we talking about microrealism? Are we talking about like a little script tattoo? Where is this tattoo going? Because there's going to be a price difference between something that you get on your arm or on your leg in a super easy to reach place, and then if you want this tattoo just in a place that's difficult to tattoo. I mean, there's so many parts of your body. I think for a lot of people, the go-to placement is ribs. Any tattoo that you might get on an arm or leg is going to be less expensive than if you get that same tattoo on the ribs. So placement is a factor, intricacy of the design. There's so many things. Whenever you come in, and because you hear about this all the time, people come in and they're like, well, how much is a sleeve? It's like, well, what is that sleeve? A lot of the time that I hear this question, I'll ask, well, how long is a piece of string? You know, like, how much is a used car? What is the used car? Is it a used Lamborghini? Is it a used early 2000s Honda Civic with 300,000 miles on it? There's just so many variables that can affect that. So, you know, again, this is just go in with some reference material, have an idea of who it is that you want to tattoo, do an actual consultation instead of just walking in and being willing to get tattooed by anybody. And, you know, just let them know about what your budget is. You know, we don't have any problem telling you if your budget is unrealistic, but then, you know, don't follow that up with, well, I got this tattoo from my homeboy for this much, because we're just going to encourage you to go back to your homeboy. So, yeah, I mean, just to recapitulate, there's a way to go about walking into a tattoo shop. I mean, the thing is that, like, we view this as a sacred thing. You know, I like to use the phrase scab temple to refer to a tattoo shop, because it's like we take this very seriously, because tattooing is it's not just a job. It's not like you go to work from X o'clock to X o'clock and then, you know, you go home and you're not thinking about tattoos anymore. It's like tattooing is more of a lifestyle than it is a career. So with that being the case, it's something that we're very passionate about. We take it seriously, and our preference would be that the people who come in to get tattooed take it equally as seriously too, or at the very least respect the fact that we do take it seriously. So there's a lot of different stuff that didn't quite make this top 5 list, whether it's people coming in and asking for ridiculous tattoos jokingly. We're down to do ridiculous tattoos, but, you know, it's just be serious. But I mean, it's just, whenever you're walking into a tattoo shop that you've never walked into before, you really are setting the first impressions. And I think in most cases, our preference would be to have a functional, professional relationship with everybody that we tattoo. I mean, like, there's people that I've tattooed that I met via tattooing as clients, and, you know, I've been tattooing them for years, and that would always be my preference. So, I prefer to build rapport, and I think that building of rapport goes both ways. You know, I personally prefer to be taken somewhat seriously, and I think as a client, it's important also for the client to want to be taken seriously also. So, yeah, that's it for my top 5 list. I'm sure that there's a lot of this stuff that I left off that is worthwhile. If you guys as tattooers, if you have anything to add to this, please mention those in the comment section. I will be doing a part 2, probably a part 3 to this video, including, you know, since this one was very specific to the conversation that you have with an artist at the counter or during the consultation, because I feel like if you're the kind of client that's going to set up a consultation, you're probably serious enough not to say any of these things. But yeah, I'll do some more videos of this nature. I intend to do some instructional videos in terms of like how to go about getting ready for a tattoo. Just in terms of what you should do in the day leading up to it. I'll probably make a video about like what not to say during a tattoo. And, you know, how to go about the whole consultation process, because I think all this is worthwhile information. So yeah, that's about all I got for now. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like if you do. Like I said, leave some comments if you have any, and I will see you on the next one. See you guys.